Hi, everyone. I'm Evelyn, and this is Reppin. Thanks so much for being here. I am super stoked for my guest today. I've got the incredibly talented actress, Olivia Cheng. Olivia has built a career playing complex, powerful women, bringing authenticity, heart, and fearlessness to every role. You know her from the hit martial arts crime drama Warrior. Olivia was Atoy, a powerful madam who ran a brothel, turned survival into strategy, and built an empire in a world run by men. Before that, Olivia commanded the screen as Mei Lin in Netflix's epic series, Marco Polo. Now, she's stepping into a new chapter with the highly anticipated sequel to the hit Ready or Not, with Ready or Not 2. And Olivia is going to tell us all about it. In this conversation, we're going to get a rare, intimate look into Olivia's life. You might be surprised to learn that she faced bullying and challenges that made her confront her identity and her sense of belonging. Olivia opens up about the personal moments that shaped her perspective, how she channels those experiences into the layered, fearless characters that we love, and how they give her performances their emotional depth. So, ready or not, please make way for the talented Olivia Cheng.
I think some of my greatest teachers were my bullies. I think some of my greatest teaching moments were being on the receiving end of feeling attacked.
Rough and rugged. Represent NY, hold it down for my peeps. New York, New York. We rep the hardest. Hardcore. Nobody harder. Let them know. That's the way we rock it. Tell me what you got.
Olivia,
Hi,
it is so great to meet you. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glowing and I'm growing.
Thank you so much for making the time. I know that you have been
course.
super busy, and I want to first start by congratulating you on this great new film called Ready or Not 2, which is the sequel to the sleeper hit Ready or Not. I have to be honest with you, Olivia, I'm not a fan of horror movies, but I loved this film. Tell me a little bit about the project, your character, and what was it that you loved about this?
It's funny you say you're not a fan of horror. I think horror is, when done well, can be one of the most clever genres to say something deep and poignant about the human psyche, right? Because they take our deepest fears and turn it into a metaphor. And when done well, it can blow your mind. But like you, I tend to stay away from them because I'm like, why do I want to get stressed out at like 10 o'clock at night? I just want to relax before going to bed.
Right.
When I heard about the Ready or Not sequel, I was like, do I want to go for this? This sounds so dark. Like a bride on her wedding night finds out that her in-laws have made a pact with the devil and they're hunting her. I wasn't sure if this was going to be something like Saw,
Right. Okay, got
you
it.
know, and right
Yeah.
and Samara Weaving, the star who plays Grace McCauley of the Ready or Not franchise now, she's actually truly, genuinely one of my favorite actresses of her generation. I've watched her in pretty much everything she's ever done except for her horror stuff like The Babysitter. And I remember seeing her on billboards around LA in this like bloody wedding dress. And I was like, probably not my genre.
Okay.
So when I got told that they're doing a sequel and they'd like to see you for this role, my team put out like all this information about how, okay, they were made for 6 million. And at the highest hopes, they thought maybe they'd make 12 million. And then it ended up going on to make 60.
Yeah, it made a lot.
So it made a lot of money. And I was like, for it to go 5 times beyond its highest projections, that means there's word of mouth. And that means there's something really special about this film. And in this time, right, where we're recovering from a strike, I can't take any opportunity for granted. So let me at least watch it and see what all the buzz is about.
Yeah.
And I put it on, and by the end, I was like, that was awesome. I loved it so much. It was so funny. It was unexpectedly funny because, again, I thought horror. I thought it was going to be like dark, 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 but it was so acerbic and dry and campy in the best ways. Yes, there's jump scares, but there's also this groundedness because there's like Henry Czerny and Adam Brody, Andy McDowell, my buddy Elise Levesque, who I came up with here in Vancouver, like fantastic actors, really grounding everything. And then I understood the tone, and then I was super excited to throw my hat in the ring, and I've never had a faster response. Like, I sent in the tape and we got a response half an hour later.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so it was, and then I was so stoked to come out and play because of the comedic elements to all of it.
Yeah. I think you hit on a really good point. Sometimes horror is just sudden, and then like this is so beautifully layered. There is this comedy, and also there is like this sisterly chemistry between the two in this film, which I love. Tell me a little bit about your character.
So I play a character. I mean, they gave me these like phonetics, right? They were just like Wan Chun Xing, and I was like, hey, I need to make a name out of it. So my friend, a UK actor, Yin Wang, he helped me make the name, and so we came up with Wan Chun Xing, which means like morning star. For short, to anglicize it, we'll just call her Chen. And she is one of the heads of the families that sit on this high council. So by surviving the first game of hide and seek in the first Ready or Not, Grace has now triggered a very rare clause where she thinks she's out of the woods, but what she's actually triggered is this double or nothing game where now all the high council families who sat in this rarefied air with the Domuses, we now all have to hunt her to fight for the highest seat on the high council. And she is forced to face off against us or her sister dies.
Yeah.
I mean, they would both die. So
no pressure.
No pressure. She's ready to die because she's like, I'm not playing. But she's not ready to let them take her sister's life. And that's how they kind of hold her hostage to playing the game. So I'm one of the heads of family, and I think I'm the least despicable. But that's your job when you're one of the villains, right? Is you have to have your justification for what you're doing.
But I'm not going to spoil it, but there is a twist to your character a little bit, which I loved, and I actually didn't see coming. So I'll leave it like that.
Okay, I know exactly. I'm really happy to hear that because I actually came in planning to play her with a very different color.
Okay.
In a way, and I can't say too much because we were filming in this massive scene. Oh gosh, I really can't say too much. And it doesn't matter now because they had to go with we went with the take we went with.
I think it's great. Because I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming. I was expecting something else from your character. And then when it sort of had a twist, I was like, oh, that's cool. So I really appreciated that very much. And I think that the film is super fun. And again, to your point, I didn't come out of that like a complete stress ball. It was such a great ride. I think that's what I would describe it as. It was a super fun ride.
And it's cathartic in a really messed up way. Right? Because in both of them, the ending is so earned. And they put the characters through so much that there's a bit of a catharsis in part one. And I hope that the audience feels a similar sense of catharsis by the end of ours. Like, just like, you know what I mean?
Totally. But congratulations on the film. You've been in so many huge projects. And in almost every single project you've done, you've been like a badass, strong woman. I mean, from Warrior playing Atoy to Marco Polo, I can go on and on. But you said something to me on the phone yesterday that I thought was super interesting. And you said you love all of these roles and it's an honor for you to tell these stories. Tell me a little bit about what you meant by that and sort of open that up a little bit.
I think that for me, I love acting. I love getting to play. I love getting to create a character and step into a world and basically get to be a professional make-believer. And I think for me, acting has been a lifesaver in the sense that it really helped me to understand big feelings. It really helped me to understand myself.
Mm.
And it really, with a lot of these roles, helped me to almost embrace and befriend my shadow self. Anyone who's not familiar with it, the term shadow self, one of my first teachers actually read from a book called The Dark Side of Light Chasers. And she introduced the concept of, we think of, the nice girl, the good, appropriate girl, but feelings like anger, resentment, fear, things that we might term more negative,
Mhm.
and maybe we try to put it away or hide or pretend we don't have those things or get so good at self-denying and pushing those feelings down. That's actually our shadow self, and we need our
Oh.
shadow self as much as we need the light seeker that exists within all of us and is maybe seen more as like socially appropriate. And I feel like to step into the roles that I have playing the toys, the
Mhm.
Maylins, you can't judge these women. They make choices that most of us would not make, but that's because most of us aren't put into the corner like these women
Right.
are.
Right.
And so to make them real, I had to almost admit that the first thing you have to do is you have to find your empathy for these characters. Otherwise, you're just going to judge them. You're
Right.
you're just going to make them these two-dimensional, like your judgment is going to influence your ability to make them human.
Right.
And my job is always to make these women human. So at first, absolutely judge away. You might see at first, oh, it's a concubine, a
Madam.
madame,
Yeah.
right? Runs a brothel. Like, oh, I'm going to write these women off because they're the lowest of the low, or depending what your perspective is. But if you stay with the ride, then you should start to see other colors and you should start to forget what they do and start to become invested in who they are.
All of these women, to your point, you have to understand the circumstances that they are put in, in order to understand the choices that they're making. Now, when you were growing up, can you tell me a little bit about what it was like? Because you do bring an understanding and a depth to your roles of seeing that you cannot judge someone based on just what you're seeing instantaneously. And that's certainly one of the themes that I, talk about on this podcast. I didn't realize that your parents spoke Cantonese, but you know Mandarin, correct? But do you speak Cantonese at all?
I speak Cantonese, I speak Mandarin. I'm intermediate at both. I'm not gonna, sit here and be like, I am so fluent that they think I'm native. Anyone who's watched Warrior and, I think if anything, that shows how much people love Warrior because we expected everyone to come at us a lot harder for the Cantonese. We know.
My Cantonese is as good as ordering dim sum, and that's about as good as I get. You talked a little bit about your upbringing, and I wonder if your ability to connect with these people on a deeper level comes from that. Can you tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up? Because your father started a bilingual Mandarin school.
The Mandarin bilingual program.
Tell me a little bit about that and what it was like for you to grow up in that. Like, what kind of things were imprinted on you at that particular point?
So my dad opened the phone book when my brother was maybe 3 or 4 years old. And so I would have been like 1 or 2. And he called every Chinese name in the phone book, looking for other parents who might be interested in this idea of starting a Mandarin immersion program in the public school system.
Mhm.
And that's actually how they found their first teacher, Bai Lao Shi, Miss Carolyn Pai. And I don't know the details, but they went to the public school system and they successfully lobbied for this program to start. And it's now the second largest language immersion program in Edmonton.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and for whatever reason, it hasn't been, I think, successfully replicated in any other school system in the way that it's just got this base
That's
in
awesome.
Edmonton. And now it's cool because like go and pick up my niece and nephew from the same program, and it trips me out because we were like the founding class.
Yeah.
My brother was the founding class, and now they're classmates. There are a whole bunch of non-Asian kids in the Mandarin bilingual program, and it's really
That's
cool to
awesome.
see that there's like all colors of students learning Mandarin and learning the cultural traditions of our heritage. So growing up, I immediately, my kindergarten through grade 6 experience, I was with all Chinese kids. And there was this comfort, I guess, in, sort of being same, like our parents were very alike. They all got along, I think, as a kid looking at adults and assuming they're all friends. We'd have our birthday parties together. We would celebrate Lunar New Year together. We would do school plays about Lunar New Year for the school assemblies. So all the other, non-Mandarin bilingual students would watch us celebrating our culture and heritage. And, I would be put into traditional Chinese dance classes, which funny enough, I used to wear all my brother's hand-me-downs and my mom used to give me a bowl cut. Or we go to like this Chinatown shop for $5.
What is it with that bowl cut?
Yeah, well, my mom told me later that she was like, I was so surprised because you and your brother were such good-looking kids. Like, look at me and your dad. I didn't want you to grow up relying on your beauty. And I'm like, yeah, well, you sure swung the other way because I had no idea I was good-looking at all, and
Oh man.
everyone thought I was a boy. But she said even from the time I was a baby, everyone thought I was a boy because of my energy. Like
Oh.
I grew up and I was such a tomboy with the other, my classmates that the Chinese dance teacher put me in the boys section. And I thought I was so special being the only girl. And I was doing these moves that were like this, right? Like showing the gun shows.
Yeah.
And then my teacher came in, like my regular teacher came in and she was watching the rehearsals because we were about to perform the next night.
Mm-hmm.
And she looked and she said to the dance teacher, like, why is Olivia with the boys? And the dance teacher, and I heard this whole conversation. The dance teacher was like, is she not a boy? And to be fair, I looked like one.
Yeah, but your name is Olivia.
No, but Junti Hui.
Oh, didn't you? Okay, gotcha.
So
Yeah, got it.
right?
Yeah.
But even my name probably should have given a clue. But to be completely
Okay.
fair, I wasn't offended that she thought I was a boy. I took that as a compliment. And I was like, fair enough, because everyone mistook me for a boy when I was growing up. And when I showed up for class pictures one day in a dress, it blew people's minds. We didn't have terms for transgender back then. We didn't have, but the schoolyard was like a buzz
Oh
with
my
like,
God, that's so
what's happening? Why is that little boy in a dress? And then it was so funny because then they just threw me into the front. And it was so interesting because then I was just having to be a flower, right? They just threw me in the front. And I just would do these hand motions to be like a flower. So for me, growing up embedded in Chinese culture with other Chinese kids,
Right.
in a Chinese community, in this almost like island of culture in a very, very, non-Asian
Right.
Edmonton,
Mm-hmm.
I do think it was like my version of, in Harry Potter's mother dies, casting a protection spell over him when Voldemort comes, and it leaves him with that thunderbolt scar on his forehead.
Right.
And I feel like growing up in the Chinese bilingual program, where speaking Mandarin, being in a community that felt safe,
Mm-hmm.
and where our cultures and traditions were beloved and celebrated,
Yeah,
I think that was the protection spell for me for what was to come.
that's great.
And when you're a kid, you can't, right? You can't understand that.
No.
You don't understand that. You're just up on stage being a flower because they told you to.
Right.
I just remember we also had a thing in Edmonton called the Heritage Days, the Heritage Festivals. It's still one of my favorite festivals. And for the August long weekend, Horlack Park will be taken over by booths, and every culture that exists in Edmonton, they have a booth where they show off their dance traditions, whatever their performances are, and then they have food. So you can go around. And so seeing everyone's culture, it was amazing. I was really proud to be running around in like, my cheongsam and then, oh, I got to get back to stage to dance. And then I remember loving like the African and Latin pavilions because or like the Filipinos with like the two
Right.
sticks, and like all the rhythm. And it makes sense because they have so much like Afro Latino influence.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just, I think I would have turned out very differently, like your experience. I don't know if you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I think in many ways I listen to your story and I become very happy and envious in some ways, but happy that you had that experience because unlike you, I was like maybe the only Asian person in my elementary school. But I do think it's interesting because, you had said that you had this wonderful celebration of different cultures, certainly our own being Asian is being celebrated and embraced, as well as celebrating other cultures. But when you stepped out onto the playground, you were met with different dynamics. Can you talk about some of the challenges that you faced there? And being that you did have that celebration of self and heritage, did that sort of help buffer the bullying and the name calling when you were confronted?
It did to a degree.
Okay.
There would come more interactions and racialized events and attacks that would shake me. Let me back up. In elementary school, when recess would happen and we would kind of be let out into the wild and we would interact with kids from the other classes, like, yeah, sometimes there would be bullying. Like I would get ching-chonged,
Yeah.
or there would be like an us against them mentality that would happen on the playground.
Mhm.
But I think because I I did it was interesting. I didn't take it on personally. I mean, in later years, because here's the difference. Once I got into junior high and I was integrated into like a normal school setting where
Mhm.
suddenly I remember still stepping into my homeroom and it was like wild. It was like almost, I think I only had one other classmate from my Chinese bilingual program who came into my homeroom class when we went into junior high. Everyone else was a non-Asian kid. And that's when I started to get quiet. That's when I started to get incredibly insecure.
Oh, wow.
So elementary school was very different
Mm.
from once I started to get integrated into the public school system through junior high and high school.
It sounds like you're almost shocked into like,
I was absolute culture shock. I
okay.
remember standing there and being terrified because, up until that point, we were all Chinese kids. Most of us had classes. We would come in. We were good little Asian kids. We would sit down. We'd listen to the teacher. We were all trying to gun for good marks because we all had parents pushing us to gun
Yeah.
for good marks. We had our issues. We had our infighting and whatnot, but we were also like family, right? We were the same class from kindergarten through grade 6.
Yeah.
So suddenly, all that confidence that I had from growing up with the same group of kids just went away from junior high onwards. Anytime I was still attacked for being Asian, there was a part of me that was like, I'm not internalizing that. Like I said, it was that protection
Yeah.
spell of if they came at me for anything else, I would be full of doubt. I would be full of, if someone called me ugly, I would be like, am I? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if someone was like, you fucking chink, I'd be like, fuck you.
Yeah.
Right? Like they're like,
Yeah. You had that protective barrier.
yeah, because I was like, why would you come at me for that? That's so dumb. I'm not taking that on. But if you came at me for anything else,
Right.
I'm still growing into who I am. I'm still a kid.
You're not self-realized at that point.
Yeah. And I love when people are like, I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm like, man, if you truly don't, like, good for you. Like, bottle that up and I will purchase a lifetime supply.
I'm not going to buy anyone that says that when they're 13 years old. Like, I just don't buy that.
Yeah.
That's really amazing because, again, I didn't really have that barrier. So I was just like, oh my God. And it must have been so hard for you, Olivia, to go from, feeling community, feeling a sense of belonging in, your younger years because you were in a community of Asian kids that inherently understood the nuances of being Asian, you know? and that sort of mindset and upbringing and those values. And then, and correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you almost like felt like you were falling off a cliff a little because you went into like a whole different world where you were made shockingly aware that you were different. Is that accurate?
100%. I would say from 12 years old on, I don't think I ever felt comfortable in my skin.
I understand that. Yeah.
I got good at hiding it, but it has been a long journey
Yeah.
to get comfortable.
And does this tie into a situation with your grandfather?
Yeah. So when I was in grade 7, so, still struggling to find my place amongst this jungle of new classmates, and they were talking about things that they saw off cable and music videos, and I wasn't allowed any of that stuff. So like I'm trying to order, teen magazines to the house because I'm trying to like culturally understand all these references.
And to fit
I
in.
grew up listening to, yeah, to fit in. And I grew up, the only stations that I was listening to were like these AM stations that played oldie songs. So I love songs from like the 40s, 50s, 60s, because that's what I grew up
Okay.
listening to. And suddenly I'm in grade 7, and and people are humping each other, and there's like girls in my age group, and they all have like bras, and I'm in like an undershirt, and I mean, I still don't need a bra, let's be real, but it was just the grown upness was so confronting. It was just such a culture shock on so many levels. And I remember when the teen magazines came to my house, my dad was so upset because like on the front it was like how to kiss a boy.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm like, I never saw any of those magazines. I paid for like a full 12-month subscription. I never saw a single one.
Oh, man.
My dad took every single one.
We will find those for you.
Yeah. But I was in that kind of headspace, and my grandparents and parents understandably were very protective of me because of me and my brother, right? Like the things that they had been through, like they escaped Hong Kong during the political protests against British occupation. My mother's side experienced, they were war refugees and ended up homeless in Hong Kong. And, I'm just like a generation or two removed from extreme poverty. And with that kind of, I guess now we would call it like intergenerational trauma, they were obviously like, what if something happens to these two, right? The kids, the grandkids. So my grandparents used to meet me at the junior high bus stop, and then they would like bus me to wherever I needed to go. But now I'm like, okay, this is getting embarrassing because no one else's parents are meeting them at the bus stop and taking the bus with them.
Right.
And so I was trying to like individuate and separate myself. So it's like my grandpa was there, but I would like kind of pretend I didn't know him. And because I was just, I was already getting made fun of for enough without being like, oh, what a loser. Her grandpa's
Chaperoned.
Here. But yeah, but so on one of these days, I was sitting on one side of the bus. There were two benches that faced each other. I was sitting on one bench, and my grandpa was nearby on the other bench opposite to me. And there were these 2 or 3 boys. I remember one was in my class. And they started to make fun of my grandfather.
Oh.
They started to make fun of his nose. They started to make fun of his physical appearance, what he was wearing. And my grandparents, like a lot of immigrants, they understand. They understand more than they can express. So I could tell that my grandpa understood, and he was just sitting very, very, very still and pretending like he didn't understand, because even if he wanted to defend himself, he didn't have the language, right? He didn't have the ability.
Wow.
And I think it was always that sense of being a guest in someone else's home. And I remember sitting there and I did not know what to do.
Okay.
I was so angry at these boys, yet I didn't want to become a target. And I'm ashamed to say that. I'm ashamed to say that I didn't just stand up and tell them to shut the fuck up and make fun of them, because they were not they were nothing. They were not in a position to be making fun of anyone else's looks. Like now, if I saw
Yeah.
something like that, like I would take it on, but I froze.
Yeah, but Olivia, in your defense, what
Yeah.
were you, 12, 11 years old?
I would have been 12.
Come on. At 12 years old, I would be hesitant, but I can imagine that was incredibly hurtful and painful. How did that inform you?
I think it was one of the moments that has stayed with me because I've heard a saying about don't let someone get humiliated in front of you. Don't stand by and let someone be humiliated in front of you, because that may be the person who turns into the dictator, or it could be their villain origin story. And one act of kindness could possibly prevent that. I'm completely butchering the saying.
I understand what you're saying,
Not
though.
doing well by it. But I think that, along with, actually, funnily enough, same year, something else that happened on the bus, where again, I saw this girl being bullied by these two other girls, and I didn't know what to do. And I was just, and I wanted to do something, but I didn't know what to do. Now, as an adult, I would know to go over there and go, hey, you want to sit with me?
Right.
Maybe pretend like I know her, just pull her away. Now I'd have the ability to be mouthy back. Memories like those, it's, 'cause it's like, if we had more time, I could tell you so many more stories, but memories like that, of that powerlessness, of that feeling, that wanting to do something and not knowing what to do. I think, unfortunately, sometimes the hardest lessons are not academic, they're experienced.
Yeah.
And I think that experience informed me now, being someone who it's very difficult for me to see someone being treated unjustly or cruelly, or experiencing completely needless suffering
Yeah.
for no reason other than they're different from their perpetrators, or they're misunderstood, or
Or just even on looks or age or gender or whatever.
whatever it
Yeah.
is, whatever it is.
Yeah. It's very apparent that you have taken your platform and used your notoriety and voice also. And when I say voice, I don't mean just like Olivia Cheng, the actress with a huge fan base. I mean like Olivia Cheng, the person as well, to stand up and advocate and speak out on behalf of other people. And I think throughout my conversations on this podcast and also privately, I have learned how important it is. And I've got a new term for it. It's called body blocking. When you're able to step in for someone who might not have the strength or resources or position to speak out for themselves. I imagine that it was very painful for you to witness your grandfather, who loved you so much and you loved him so much, being bullied and disrespected. But unfortunately, in 2026, we're still dealing with that on so many different levels.
Yes, we are.
So many different levels. You and I share a cultural background. I am Chinese. I was born and raised here, but my mom was a very petite woman. And she, because of her size and how quiet she was picked on and bullied and underestimated probably throughout her entire life. And it was very painful. But on a community level, a lot of racism has been emboldened. And a lot of Asian hate was very, very present post-COVID. I think for me, watching people, especially Asians, get attacked in New York City specifically, because that's where I'm from, one of the most diverse cities in the world, was a bit shocking. You have used your platform continually to speak out. And let me just paraphrase something. You had posted something that said, what kind of awful stories do people tell themselves about Asians to justify the punching, the breaking our bodies, the pushing us in front of trains? How did that time hit you?
That time hit me really hard. That time probably hit me too hard. I in some ways, I feel like I've stepped back from being a megaphone for the community, because it's so exhausting and depleting for me,
Yeah, I understand
you
that.
know, and so I try to I do what I can. I just try to do what I can, maybe not as publicly in some ways, because not because I'm not willing to be public, but because I'm like, I'm trying to work smarter, not harder.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, who who is really good at this and is maybe they need support financially through a Patreon account. Let me quietly donate here. Or, okay, like I do believe art shapes society. So for a bit, I was looking for newer directors who were coming up. Whenever I got approached, it still have to be like a decent project kind of thing. But I was working with up and coming directors more and lending talent in that way. I've offered my home as a bit of an escape for activists who are, out front and burned out, and maybe just, I think Vancouver's an incredibly great city for recovery and reflection.
You're so great about voicing your feelings. Where did you find this power that you have? Do you remember?
I think there's so many factors that going through. I think some of my greatest teachers were my bullies. I think some of my greatest teaching moments were being on the receiving end of feeling attacked, literally being attacked at times. Like when I was 15, I was just, it sometimes would take me 90 minutes to bus home, and I would have to do 3 transfers, and I would go through this indoor pedway in a mall to avoid the, minus 30-degree temperatures. Growing up in the prairies is no joke, 8 months of Canadian prairie winter. And when I was walking through one of these pedways, I remember seeing this man, the tail end of a man yelling at this Asian grandma, but it was like the tail end, and then he walked off and she walked on, and I was like, what was that? And then I killed some time in the mall and then started to make my way to the bus, and that same man came out of the door coming towards me, and he backed me into the wall and was just like, I'm sick of all you chinks taking our jobs, go the fuck back to China.
That is so fucked up.
And I'm a kid, I'm 15, and there was no one else in the hallway. And I wanted to say something. Playground racism and schoolyard racism is one thing. Some of my greatest teachers and mentors have always been, I mean, I don't think of it this way as a kid, but they were always like white adults. Up until that point. I interacted with them as my gymnastics coaches, as my teachers. This was the first time a white adult was coming at me. Culturally, it's like we don't attack our elders.
Yeah.
And I just remember wanting to say something, like not wanting to let him get away with that, but also like, I don't know, but not wanting to freeze again. And all I was able to do was just be like,
You were 15
I know.
and this adult was towering over you.
Yeah, but this is the development, right? Where all I could come up with was, excuse me?
Right.
And then he whirled around and came back, and spit was hitting my face. I could see the whites in his sideburns, and he was like, you heard me. I said, I'm sick of all you chinks taking our fucking jobs. Go the fuck back to China. Right? And he was like poking his hand into my chest, and then he stalked off, and I just stood there, and I was like, there were no witnesses.
Right.
And I went to like a mall security, because now I suddenly understood he's going around looking for all the Asians. That's what I saw with him with the grandma. So I went to like the mall security, who in my mind, she's in a uniform. So I'm like, oh, she's law enforcement. She's the same. I told her what happened. And now I understand that she was probably untrained in terms of emotional support, let alone any actual, like she made a show of sort of looking around. I took that to mean I'm not worth helping. I think some of those lessons, when you know what it is to be in that position, and then you see someone else going through it, and it took me honestly till after Marco Polo, where someone was like, have you ever read the book The Highly Sensitive Person by Dr. Elaine Aron? And I got it, and there's like a checklist right off the front, and they were like, if you get 15 out of 20, you're a highly sensitive person. I think I got like 18, 19 out of 20. So it's taken me a long time to understand that I have this empathic quality, right? I can feel what other people are feeling. I'm very sensitive to energies.
Yeah. Which is great and hard for you.
It's a blessing because I think it's the superpower of what makes me able to play
Right.
complex characters and bring nuance.
But also very hard as a person.
It's very hard energetically when you don't understand how to advocate for yourself, how to have energetic boundaries, when the world is messed up and you feel it. You
Right.
feel it very, very, very deeply.
Right.
It's a blessing that needs to be managed for sure.
So I'm sure, just going back to post-COVID, the whole attacks on AAPI, which was obviously a spike, that must have been very traumatic for you because it brought back a lot, I think, from your grandfather and this mall incident. And I'm so sorry that happened. But also because you're so sensitive.
100%. 100%.
I'm kind of more of a brash New Yorker in some ways. The whole spike in AAPI hate was crazy. And it was so upsetting to see people being slaughtered essentially because of what they look like, and they look like us.
Yeah.
It still blows my mind till this day. I have a hard time really understanding how someone can actively, deeply hate someone based on what they look like. I don't really understand that. My brain doesn't work that way. So I would imagine that someone who is so empathetic as yourself, that is very traumatic.
Yeah, it was. And my breaking point probably came with the with the Atlanta spa shootings, right? Like it's still and that's not the only massacre that's ever happened on American soil, right? Like you look into Warrior, and a lot of the things we depicted in Warrior were horrible, but they were so sanitized
Right.
compared to some of the real stories and what those lynchings were like. And it was too graphic for even a show like Warrior.
Right.
I'm glad that it made some people look a little deeper, because I do believe if you don't know your history, you don't understand the present as well, and you certainly may not be able to shape the future without taking lessons from the past.
100%.
Yeah, that was a very difficult time, and yet I also was like now I look back, and my training ground of growing up, and my brother has said he's lost count of how many times a pickup truck has driven by him and he's been called a chink. Or
I'm
like
so
the fight
sorry.
club that he had to go
Right.
through as a boy in elementary school. That really traumatized him, and I didn't really realize the full extent until my nephew was about to enter kindergarten, and my brother was just like, what if this it was like everything he hadn't processed, he was now projecting as a possibility onto, our sweet little my nephew, his son.
Right.
And and I was fully prepared to, I'm like, if we have to teach him to fight, we have to teach him to fight. I didn't roll out of the womb knowing how to defend. It became easier to defend other people than to defend myself. And I think that's true for a lot of people, right? Like
Right.
when you see it happening to someone else, you're not thinking, but you can sometimes, I mean, I guess I'm speaking for myself here. I understand how to be the protector that I needed.
That is beautifully said. You and I definitely have shared a lot of similarities, similar experiences. But I will say this, to be self-realized, regardless of race. It takes a lot of time to be self-realized. But I think your work on screen, just you doing what you were born to do, to storytell with these amazing characters. And I will say this very emphatically. I think leadership isn't just what you do on screen. It's how you live your life every single day. And you have used your voice both publicly and privately to be a champion, not just for AAPI. I mean, you've stood out for the Black community, for the Indigenous. So I hope you know that you are challenging the narrative and you're changing what is possible for us. What are some of the things that you've heard since you've done like 8,000 high profile projects?
I really appreciate that. I think in a lot of ways I'm in a bit of a vacuum because number one, I totally thought I'd move to LA because that's supposed to be the actor's dream and I did not. And so I'm in Vancouver. I'm forever looking for somewhere to live that just goes, oh, you're meant to be here. I really try to have a life outside of film and television because I think it can be such an echo chamber. It can be a lot of fun and it can be unhealthy in certain ways. I'm so grateful to hear that there's impact because sometimes like no, I don't know. And one of my favorite things is I always know when someone recognizes me from Warrior, specifically an Asian female recognizes me from Warrior, when they run up and they just hug me and start crying. It's only happened 3 times, but I knew immediately, especially because that was during the recovery from the pandemic. I knew immediately, I'm like, they know me as Atoy. And I was right. Like once they, sort of had collected themselves and we started talking, it was always Warrior.
So, what did it
You
say
know,
to you when that happened?
I think it said to me that, you know, that show and that role became a symbol of hope and became a call to fight. Not necessarily physically. I would never be like, yeah, get in there, right? Like as given what happened to my own brother, I would never want anyone to have to fight out of self-defense or fight to just, to be the attacker. I would never want I don't when I say call to fight, I don't mean like, yeah, get out there and
Right.
get armed. I mean that. I just mean
Stand your
that
ground.
yeah, so there was a bit where I would try to take Zoom calls specifically with Asian women who were writing to me and one was like she was a cellist, I believe, in a New York symphony thing. She started to, push for policy, like racial protection policy within her symphony. Another teacher started to push for policy and better racial awareness. I do believe that if you see the problem, you're probably also the best person to solve it because you see it. If it bothers you that much, you just naturally start to act. And then the next thing you know, it's like, it's your responsibility to finish what you started or to get people who see what you're saying and suddenly you have to lead them because you started it.
Yeah.
I don't think leadership is something I don't seek it. Sometimes I think it seeks me because I might be the one who has the idea. And then everyone's like, great, what do we do? And I'm like, hadn't thought this far. I made a ruckus in many different ways. And I have to pay tribute to a lot of Black women who were in my life at that time and who have been through things. And a lot of their tried or true techniques they taught me. They're like, look, you have a lot of friends who have the blue checkmark brigade, so have them amplify your tweet.
Yeah.
And so I wrote a thing, I copied and pasted. I explained what the situation was. There was I won't name them, but there was a financial institution that was putting out banking sales stuff. They were using like some outdated terms, and
Gotcha.
I tried to I called customer service. I tried to go through and I couldn't get through. So, but I was so frustrated. And yes, I was absolutely hypersensitive to the language out there, to things that were 100%. I was like, I bank here. Like, why should I feel
Right.
like this? But I'm like, all right, they're not taking my calls. They're not returning my emails. When I do get through to a customer service line, they're like, we'll just pass it to above. I'm like, no one in the position who can actually make changes is actually going to read this.
Right.
This email complaint.
So, what did you do?
I
Just waiting for this.
This is credit to Bria Baker, who is the author of a book called Rooted. She was the one who's like, get your blue checkmark brigade behind you. And I put out a tweet with my complaints. I took screenshots of what I was complaining about. And I gave my friends the heads up. I said, this is what I'm doing. No pressure at all. If this resonates with you, though, all I'm asking is that could you just retweet it And everyone said yes.
Yeah.
Everyone retweeted. And then they added their
Yep.
extra sauce. And they retweeted. And man, it kicked off a shitstorm at the bank.
Good.
Yeah, but like because I was friends with one of my previous financial advisors, he's like, Olivia, these are very, very, very busy people. And like 12 heads of all departments have dropped everything to hop on an emergency Zoom call to figure out what happened here. And the compliance department, for 2 hours, they had to trace back. It was nothing malicious. It was just a major oversight. One of the executive VPs of the bank ended up personally calling me, and I was like, well, I'd like the bank to make a donation, please.
That's
And they
great.
did. And yeah, and
That's
he
great.
was really nice. Here's the most interesting thing. They made a donation at the time. Now I wish I'd asked for so much more because I didn't really understand the scope of corporate money at that point. And I was like, I got $1,000 donated. And I'm like, I should have asked for
10,000.
yeah, something. And I was like, but you know what? They handled it so well.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a week to understand, because I was like, why do I feel so discombobulated? And I realized I felt so discombobulated because I actually won.
Okay.
And I wasn't used to winning. You know what I mean? I was used to.
Let me just say this to you now. You're changing things on many different fronts, and I hope you continue to plug into your voice, not at the sacrifice of your well-being and mental health, though. But I do hope that whenever you hit a low point in your life, because we all do as human beings, that you do realize it just in this one anecdote, it has nothing to do necessarily with race, but it is about addressing issues that need to be addressed and correcting something when you do see something that isn't right or not appropriate. But I think at a time where, I don't know, I'm going to speak for myself. I feel like we're rolling decades back, and I feel like our voices are getting erased. And I think you said something so impactful, and I want to paraphrase you here. On your Instagram, you said, you don't have to be in my position to have power. I just want you to know that I respect the way you're using your platform. So thank you.
Thank you.
So listen, I want to keep you, but for now, can you sign us off? Can you let me know who you are and what you represent?
Oh, yes. I am Olivia Cheng, and I represent women of all backgrounds and cultures who live life outside the box.
A huge thank you to Olivia Cheng for joining me on Reppin today, for sharing her stories, her journey, and for giving us a glimpse of the incredible person behind these roles. The empathy she carries comes through in the richness of her performances and in the voice she shares off screen. Olivia is not just an amazing actor. She's a thoughtful advocate, changing the narrative and leading with heart. And also a huge thank you for her incredible team for bringing this conversation to life. One of the biggest takeaways for me is our voices matter. Our experiences give us power, and we can turn challenges into strength, just like Olivia shows us every day. I know you're going to want to follow Olivia on social media, so I'm going to have all of her links in the show notes for you. And don't forget, go see her in Ready or Not 2. You're going to love the movie. Make sure you subscribe to Reppin so you never miss a conversation just like this. Reppin is available wherever you get your podcasts, so subscribe, share, download, and leave a review. You can find me on Instagram at Reppin_podcast and on YouTube at Reppin Podcast. I'm Evelyn. Thank you for being here and for listening. Reppin is a Suburban Outlaw Productions. Until next time, stand up and represent.
Rough and rugged. Represent NY, hold it down for my peeps.